Welcome, dear one, to Whispers from the Cottage. This is a quiet place, a place where stories move slowly and nothing asks you to hurry. I make these stories for women who are tired of holding everything together, for those who give so much and are learning gently how to rest again. Here, the nights are soft. The words are simple, and every story carries a small reminder. You are allowed to slow down, and you are already enough. If you've listened before, you may recognize this feeling, the steady rhythm, the sense of coming home. And if this is your first time here, you are very welcome. There is nothing you need to do. Just listen. Tonight's story is a Christmas story, one that quietly questions the idea that more is always better. It's about a woman who stops wishing for things and begins to ask for moments instead. As you listen, you may find yourself letting go too, releasing expectations, softening old habits. Allow the story to unfold slowly. There is no lesson you need to remember, only a feeling to carry with you into sleep. Now, settle in, let your body rest, and when you're ready, the story will begin. The first snow arrived without asking. It came in the late afternoon, when the light was already soft and the sky held that pale winter blue that feels like a held breath. She noticed it by chance, standing at the window, one hand wrapped around a warm mug. She saw a single snowflake drift past the glass, then another and another. Soon the world outside began to change. Edges blurred, sounds softened, even time seemed to slow its pace. She leaned closer to the window, resting her forehead lightly against the cool glass. The cold felt grounding. Present, inside the cottage, everything was calm. A small fire burned low in the hearth, not crackling loudly, just breathing. A candle flickered on the table, its flame steady, its light gentle and forgiving. The scent of pine lingered in the air, mixed with dried orange peel and the faint sweetness of something baking slowly in the oven. This was her favorite hour of the day. That quiet space between afternoon and evening where nothing was expected of her. Outside, snow continued to fall. Patient, unconcerned, she watched as it settled on the roof of the shed, on the bare branches of the apple tree, on the narrow path leading to her door. Each flake found its place. Without effort, she exhaled. There was something comforting in that. The way the snow did not rush, the way it did not try to be more than what it was. She took a slow sip from her mug, feeling the warmth spread through her chest, and allowed her shoulders to drop. For a moment, she forgot about the calendar, about the approaching holiday, about the questions waiting for her. For now, there was only the snow and the quiet and the gentle promise of evening. As evening settled in, the cottage grew even quieter. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting a soft amber light across the room. Shadows moved slowly along the walls, never sharp, never demanding attention. She set her empty mug on the table and wrapped the wool blanket more tightly around her shoulders. Outside, the snow continued its gentle work, layer by layer, covering the world in silence. It was then that she noticed her phone. It lay on the wooden table near the window, face down, still and unassuming. She hadn't heard it vibrate. She hadn't heard a sound at all. And yet, she already knew. There was a familiar feeling in her chest, not heavy, just aware. She reached for the phone slowly, as if giving herself time to change her mind. When she turned it over, the screen glowed softly. A message. What would you like for Christmas this year? She smiled, not with irritation, but with something closer to tenderness. They always asked, every year, her mother, her sister, friends who wanted to show their love in the most ordinary way they knew. She understood that, and still the question landed differently now. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around her cottage, at the armchair by the fire, the single shelf of books, the hooks by the door, holding only the coats she truly wore. There was nothing missing here. Her cupboards were full enough, her drawers closed easily. Nothing spilled over, nothing asked to be reorganized. She remembered a time when things had felt different, when every surface was crowded, when gifts accumulated quietly, year after year, until the space around her felt tight. She had been grateful then, truly, but also tired. Each new object had come with a quiet responsibility, a need to find a place, a promise to remember why it was there. She exhaled slowly, the way she had learned to do when she didn't want to rush an answer. The phone rested in her palm, warm now from her touch. What do you want for Christmas? She looked back out the window. Snow pressed gently against the glass, as if listening. She didn't want to explain. Not tonight. She turned the phone face down again, letting the question wait. There would be time for it. For now, the night was still young, and the quiet felt more important. She rose from the chair slowly, not because she had somewhere to go, but because her body asked for movement. The wooden floor felt cool beneath her feet. As she crossed the room, each step familiar, each sound softened by the quiet. This cottage had not always felt like this. Once, it had been fuller, not warmer, just fuller. Shelves lined with objects that held stories she no longer remembered. Drawers that resisted closing. Corners that collected things simply because there was space to fill. Back then, she thought that was how a home was meant to be. Proof of a full life, evidence of love, gifts from birthdays, souvenirs from trips, well-meant objects, wrapped carefully and given with smiles. She had kept them all for years, not because she needed them, but because letting go felt ungrateful. She paused near the bookshelf now, running her fingers lightly along the spines. Each book here had been chosen. Some read many times, others waiting patiently. There was space between them, air. She remembered the first thing she let go of, a small ornament, beautiful but never used. It had lived in a box for years, wrapped in tissue paper, waiting for a moment that never came. Letting it go had felt strange, almost wrong, and then relieving. One by one, she learned the quiet difference between keeping something out of love and keeping it out of habit. The cottage changed with her. Surfaces cleared, light traveled farther, silence found places to rest. Now, when she stood in the center of the room, she could breathe fully. Nothing leaned in too close. Nothing demanded her attention. This space held her, not her belongings. She moved to the window again, watching snow settle on the sill. Her reflection stared back at her softly, calm, unburdened. This home did not need more, and somewhere deep inside, she realized neither did she. The snow outside had thickened, layer upon layer, as if the night itself was tucking the world in. She lowered the curtains and turned back toward the room, the candlelight now holding everything in a warm glow. Christmas had always been like this, soft on the outside, busy underneath. She remembered mornings filled with paper and ribbon, the sound of tearing wrapping, the polite gasps, the quick thank yous, hands reaching, smiles exchanged, boxes opening one after another. There was joy in it. Of course there was, but there was also something else. A quiet pressure to react just right, to be surprised, to be grateful in the correct way. She remembered sitting among the opened gifts, the room suddenly cluttered, wondering where everything would go. A scarf that was beautiful, but never quite her color. A kitchen gadget she hadn't asked for. Decorations that didn't fit her home, but had been chosen with care. Each gift came with a story. Each story came with responsibility. She had folded them carefully, stored them neatly, promised herself she would use them someday. But someday rarely arrived. Years passed, and boxes filled quietly, not with joy, but with obligation. She had never spoken of it. It felt unkind to admit that abundance could feel heavy, that receiving could sometimes feel like carrying. So she smiled, she thanked, she kept, until one winter, long after the decorations were packed away, she noticed how tired she felt. Not tired in her body, but in her space. That was when she began to listen to the feeling beneath the gratitude, to the quiet longing for ease. She had not wanted less love. She had wanted less weight, and perhaps more room to feel present. She stood still now, the memory settling gently inside her. The candle flame flickered, as if in agreement. Christmas, she realized, did not need to be carried. It could be shared. She sat down in the armchair, the blanket heavy and comforting across her legs. For a while, she did nothing at all. The fire breathed softly. The snow continued its quiet fall. The cottage held the stillness without effort. She closed her eyes and let the question return, not as a message on a screen, but as a gentle invitation. What do you want? Not what should be wanted, not what would be easiest to give. What do you truly want? Images rose slowly, as if from beneath calm water. A forest path in winter, boots crunching over frost, cold air filling her lungs, a shared silence with someone who understood that quiet did not need to be filled. A long table, set simply, hands passing bread, laughter arriving without being planned. She saw herself waking without an alarm, morning light stretching across the floor, time wide and unclaimed. These were not things. They could not be wrapped. They did not need storage. They lived in the body, in breath, in memory. She opened her eyes. The answer felt clear now. She did not want more. She wanted deeper conversations, deeper rest, deeper presence. She wanted Christmas to feel like this moment, unhurried, warm, true. The fire shifted, sending a small spark upward. She smiled softly. Perhaps this year, she thought, she would finally say it. The next evening, the cottage welcomed familiar footsteps. Coats were hung by the door, boots lined up neatly on the mat. Cold air slipped inside, then quickly warmed. There was tea on the stove, soup simmering softly, the kind of meal that asked nothing more than time. They gathered around the table, hands cupped around warm bowls, conversation unfolding in easy layers. Nothing urgent, nothing loud. At some point, she couldn't remember exactly when, the question appeared again. "So," someone said, smiling, "have you thought about what you'd like for Christmas?" She felt it then, not resistance, just awareness. She set her spoon down, took a slow breath. This time, she didn't feel the need to explain herself in advance. "I have," she said quietly. The room stayed open, listening. "I don't really want things anymore," she continued. Her voice was calm, unapologetic. "I feel like I have enough." No one interrupted. She looked at their faces, familiar, kind, curious. "What I'd love," she said, "are moments." A pause. Then someone nodded. Another leaned back in their chair. "Moments?" a voice asked gently. She smiled. "Time together. Walks, shared meals, memories I don't need to store." The words felt light as they left her, like setting something down. The fire crackled softly, as if agreeing. No one rushed to respond. And in that quiet, she felt something shift, relief. For a moment, no one spoke, not because the words were heavy, but because they had landed. The fire hummed softly in the hearth. Steam curled from the bowls on the table. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. She watched their faces, not searching for approval, just noticing. There was curiosity there, recognition, a quiet relief she hadn't expected. Her sister was the first to smile. That actually sounds really nice, she said, almost to herself. Their mother nodded slowly, as if something old had finally been named. I never know what to buy anymore, she admitted. There's already so much. Someone laughed softly, not unkindly, but with understanding. They began to talk then, not about stores or lists, but about time. A walk they'd been meaning to take together, a weekend away that had always been postponed, a shared morning ritual, once a month, just coffee and quiet. She listened, her chest warm. No one asked her to justify herself. No one tried to change her mind. Instead, they met her where she was. And in that meeting, she felt something soften inside her. This was what she had wanted all along. Not fewer gifts, but more presence. The conversation slowed naturally, settling into something comfortable. The soup was finished, the bowls empty, but the feeling remained full. Christmas Eve arrived, wrapped in quiet. The day had been pale and slow, the kind that barely asked to be remembered. Clouds hung low over the fields, holding the promise of more snow. By evening, the world outside the cottage was hushed completely. Lights glowed in distant windows. A single star appeared between drifting clouds. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang once. Soft, unhurried. Inside, the cottage felt smaller in the best way. Candles were lit, not many, just enough. The table was set simply. Plates warmed in the oven. Bread rested beneath a cloth. They moved together without planning, passing things, sharing small smiles. No one rushed. There were no piles of presents waiting, no bright paper demanding attention. Instead, there was space. After dinner, they pulled chairs closer to the fire. Someone poured tea. Another wrapped a blanket around their shoulders. They spoke quietly. Stories from years ago surfaced, the kind that don't usually find room. Laughter came easily. So did silence. She leaned back, listening to the low murmur of voices, the gentle pop of the fire. This was it, she realized. Not the absence of gifts, but the presence of ease. When the evening thinned and coats were gathered, they lingered at the door. No one wanted to break the spell too quickly. Outside, snow had begun again. As the door closed behind the last goodbye, the cottage returned to stillness. She stood for a moment, hand resting on the wood, breathing it in. Christmas had arrived, and it felt light. She woke without an alarm. The light in the room was pale and gentle, filtering through the curtains like a quiet greeting. For a moment, she stayed exactly where she was, listening. The cottage was still, no voices, no movement, just the soft hum of warmth in the walls. She stretched slowly, letting her body wake in its own time, and pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders. When she finally rose, the floor was cold beneath her feet, a small reminder that it was winter. She padded into the kitchen, the scent of yesterday's fire still lingering faintly in the air. Outside, the world lay white and undisturbed. No footprints, no tracks, as if the night had erased everything unnecessary. She put the kettle on, listening to the familiar sound, water filling, the click of the switch, the low building hum. While it heated, she stood by the window. Snow clung to the branches of the trees. The path to the door had disappeared completely. Christmas morning had no agenda. There were no boxes to open, no schedule to follow. Only this: she poured the hot water, watched steam rise from the mug, and wrapped her hands around it. Warmth spread slowly. She took a sip, then another. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet sense of gratitude settled. Not the kind that asks to be expressed, but the kind that simply exists. She was not missing anything. She was exactly where she needed to be. Later that morning, they returned, not all at once, not with urgency, just gentle arrivals, knocks at the door, smiles warmed by cold air. They came with empty hands and open faces. Coats were hung, boots were lined up, the kettle was filled again. They sat together at the table, mugs cradled between palms, steam rising like quiet conversation. Someone spoke first. "In spring," her sister said, "let's take that walk by the lake, the one we always talk about." Another added, "There's a small concert in March. We could go together." Her mother smiled softly. "Every first Sunday," she said. "You come here. No reason, just tea." They weren't promises written down. They didn't need to be. They settled gently into the room, into memory, into intention. She felt them land inside her, each one light, each one real. This was what she had hoped for, not more, but enough. The morning unfolded slowly. They cooked together, cut bread, basted bowls, shared the quiet work of being together. Outside, snow began to melt just slightly, droplets forming on branches, catching the light. Time stretched. No one checked the clock, and in that ease, she understood something clearly. These moments would stay with her long after objects faded. They required no storage, only presence. As the day moved quietly toward afternoon, The cottage softened again. Voices faded. Footsteps disappeared down the path. The door closed gently behind the last goodbye. She stood alone in the kitchen for a moment, hands resting on the wooden table, listening to the silence return, not empty, complete. The fire still glowed faintly. A single candle remained lit, its flame steady and calm. She carried her mug back to the armchair and settled in, the familiar weight of the blanket grounding her. Outside, the snow continued its slow transformation, white giving way to small patches of earth beneath. Nothing rushed. She thought about the years she had believed that wanting less meant lacking something, that fewer things meant fewer joys. Now she understood differently. Choosing less was an act of trust. Trust that she already had enough. Trust that connection didn't need proof. Trust that love could arrive without packaging. She rested her head back and closed her eyes. Her breath moved easily now, unburdened. This Christmas had given her no objects to keep, and yet she felt fuller than ever. The quiet stayed with her, and she let it.